Right, there you go. We're just starting to record there. Thank you very much for you all there, for your patience within that. Just a slight technical issue, which we've now corrected. Today's presentation is somewhat special to me. This is a gentleman by the name of Sergio Petrucci, a former student which I taught in the past, and we have maintained our friendship over the years since. So it gives me great honour to present this week's presentation entitled Reach for the Sky and Let Your Heart Run Free. Over to you, Sergio.
Now, when Luna Petrucci from Sunderland was born, she had to have open heart surgery at the Freeman Hospital in Newcastle. Her mum and dad were so grateful they spent the next 4 years raising hundreds of thousands of pounds to fund cardiac machines and defibrillators for the region. And now the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has honoured them with a special award for their charity work, as Joanne Carter reports.
Sergio and Emma Petrucci only started their Red Sky charity 6 years ago. They had no idea that Boris Johnson was going to give them a special award.
It came about as a complete surprise and out of the blue as well. We received an email last Wednesday from Downing Street, and I came within a whisker of deleting it, thinking it was a scam or a spam email. Unfortunately, I just went back when I saw it said Downing Street, and I opened it up and read it, and I was quite surprised by it all, really. And here we are. Nice little pleasant surprise for all the work that we've done over the last couple of years.
I was quite shocked, yeah. I mean, for us, it's just something that we have to do for them saving Luna's life. So we were just trying to give as much back as we could, and we didn't expect to get an award for it in recognition this way.
Sergio's daughter Luna had to have heart surgery when she was just 2. And can you remember anything, Luna? What memories do you have?
I have none.
We look at photos, don't we?
Yeah.
We've got lots of photos.
It was a success, and she's now a happy 8-year-old. As a thank you to the heart unit at the Freeman Hospital, her mum and dad decided to organise a charity ball.
We called it the Red Sky Ball because the morning that Luna had the operation, when I took the walk from the parent block at the Freeman Hospital over to be by our bedside, the sky was just full of fire and the clouds were rolling into each other. And then the week, as the week went on and she got better, those red skies cleared into nice, beautiful, crisp blue ones. So it was a bit poetic as well at the same time.
So far, they've raised close to £400,000, and they're planning more events once lockdown ends. Joanne Carter, BBC Look North, Newcastle.
So there we go. That's not the end of the speech, by the way. Firstly, thank you to Derek Watson and the team at the Sunderland University for inviting me along today. My name is Sergio Petrucci. I'm a graduate of Sunderland University Business School, and I've been asked to come along to share my journey and the challenges that I've come across to get to where we are today. So basically, I'm going to take you through, I guess, a little bit of my life story, which has pretty much helped mold me to where we are. So let's crack it. So I'm the founder of a charity in the Northeast called Red Sky Foundation, which basically looks after babies, children and adults' hearts and those that are living with heart conditions right across the Northeast. It's very successful, and we've raised hundreds of thousands of pounds now, as you heard on that news bulletin. It's as you can tell, it's quite emotional, and I'm very proud of it as well. So anyway, let's kick off. So I was born and bred in Sunderland to two amazing parents, Janice and Agostino Petrucci. And as you can probably gather by the name, I'm half Italian, and my dad came from a place just outside of Rome on the east coast, sorry, the west coast. Similar to Sunderland, to be honest with you. And when I was born, they gave me the name Sergio. So when the story goes, when my mum was pushing me around in the pram and people would peer in, and that's what my name was, they were quite took aback when they thought that my mum had given me a knighthood, Sergio. So as it happens, I'm so pleased that they did, because it is a name that lots of people do remember. So growing up was great. I had a perfect childhood, just like everybody else. And my dad was a businessman. He had some successful salons, hairdressing, and later on some clothes shops as well. And I was brought up living and breathing the family business. And when I got to 10 years old, he gave me a Saturday job. So there I was, sweeping the floor, washing the hair, dealing with customers from a very young age, but also learning about the customer experience, why people would come there. And there was gents lined up down the stairs waiting to get a haircut when they could have gone anywhere, but they were coming for that whole Salon 70 experience. And I was part of that. Now, back then, there was no social media. There was no Facebook, certainly no Karens on Facebook, given their opinion of an experience like a TripAdvisor that you've got today. But the place was just buzzing. It was a circus. It was an entertainment. It was the place to get your hair cut. But best of all, you'd probably call it the crack was great. Now, basically, at the end of every Saturday, they'd count the money. It was chocolate block, and I'd get slipped a tenner, £10 across the desk. And I'd shove it in my pocket and put a smile on my face. And if I worked really hard, I'd get £15. But sometimes, if I was cheeky and I acted myself, I'd get nothing at all. And that did happen quite often, actually. But I'd just get on with it, and I quickly learned to know that whatever I put in, I got out. And my dad's first lesson to me was, if you work hard now, you'll be able to play for the rest of your life. If you play now, you'll be able to work for the rest of your life. Basically, just use your time wisely. And for those that are students watching this, I guess that's a key lesson. Use your time wisely now, and the rewards will come. Sundays were just a little bit different. My dad would take me to church. Before we go, the towels would be washed, and then we'd dry them on the back of the salon chairs. And then he'd take me off to church, and I absolutely hated it, to be honest with you. It was so boring. I mean, all that priest would go on about was about values, respect, love for each other. But that was the way that I was getting brought up, and who was I to question it? And totally looking back now, I really understand why and how much I was exposed to that kind of way of life, what great customer service meant, and the delivery of it all as well. But little did I know back then that my life was going to be shaped around strong core family values, which lead me here today. As the years went on, my dad opened a clothes shop chain called Tucci. It was the best place to go for your clothes, your jeans, your place to go for the clothes for a Saturday night out, and it was amazing. And all of his staff were gorgeous as well, and I was really excited about getting my Saturday job upgraded from the hairdressing salon into Tucci, but it wasn't to be. My dad didn't want me going in there because he said it was going to be called, it would be too much of a distraction, working with all those beautiful girls and the other Saturday guys. And basically, I had to go and find a job and prove myself in a retailer elsewhere, which was a sports shop called T.Y. McGurk's. And fast forward to when I was taking my GCSEs, I was successful then. I did have to work hard, to be honest with you, at school. And the next progression was to do my A-levels. And I guess the progression after that was to go to the University of Sunderland. As you probably gather, I didn't really want to leave home and go somewhere else. And anyway, the A-level results day came, and I was expecting quite good marks, to be honest with you. But in all honesty, I failed. Well, I passed one, and it was business studies. But I probably just scraped it, to be honest with you. And I didn't realise the importance of education back then. Like I say, I just thought I was just going to slide straight into the family business. But anyway, I went down to the university on Chester Road in Sunderland, and I tried to speak to somebody. And prior to the results coming out, I'd written a letter to the course leader just to ask if anything had changed with the course that I was applying for. But there I was, about to get shoehorned into a computers with business course, and I didn't really know anything about computers at the time until somebody walked past. But that somebody was the person that I'd wrote that letter to. Now, we'll say what's in the name, but he remembered that I was called Sergio Petrucci. And he took me to one side and I explained, I said, look, you know, obviously I'd learned how to communicate from a young age, and I just, you know, clearly things have changed now. But I just told him, I said, things haven't worked out how I expected to. I begged him to give me a chance. I said I wouldn't let him down. And this was the course that was for me. And, you know, I wasn't quite sure what I would do if you didn't let me in the university. So he hummed and hawed, and to be honest with you, he could have just sent me on my way, but he took a punt on me, a gamble. And he said, I'll let you in the university, but after year one, if you haven't passed or proved yourself, you'll be out, okay? So that was the deal was done. He took a chance on me. How glad I am he did. So I always remember the first lecture. It was with Derek Watson, who spoke earlier there before, 9 o'clock. In the lecture theatre next to the canteen, and I'll never forget. Fortunately, I was on time that day, not like today. And I I always remember some Greeks tried to get in the lecture hall at 1 minute past 9, and he sent them packing. He wouldn't let them in, and I guess that was the start of things. Of that, it was business. It was the real world, and I had to stick in. To be honest with you. I loved university. I made new friends. They'd come from all over Europe, to be fair, and some are still very close to me today. But they were all living in student accommodation. They took a student loan out. They took a bank overdraft out on their student account. They obviously that was to pay for their digs and their accommodation and their food and just to get by. But I was living at home, and I thought, well, I want a bit of that, so I applied as well. And I became I just felt rich, to be fair. And that, I spent money on clothes that weren't out of my dad's shop. I was spending money going out with all my friends on a Friday and Saturday, and life was great. I absolutely had a ball. And guess what? I was sailing through all the modules, and I was getting cracking marks. I went, wow, this is really easy, and I love it. So needless to say, the guy who let me in, I kept going back to give him updates and to tell him where I was with it. But in year two, I didn't realise that the student overdraft clearly had to be paid back, because I'd never had anything like that. Well, not until I'd started a job anyway. And the bank manager started to ring the house, asking when I was going to repay that money that I'd pretty bad ran up, £1,000 as it was. Now, my dad didn't take too kindly to the bank manager ringing the house chasing debts. So he took me down to the bank and he closed the account and said, you'll pay me back and you'll have to get a job. And you'll have to get a job, but you won't be doing it for me. You'll have to get one in the real world. So I guess all the time my dad was teaching me lessons and again, values, strong values. So I applied for a job. It was perfect, really. It was at More Than, Royal & Son Alliance. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, till 8 o'clock at night. And I was the lad who would be ringing you up in between Coronation Street or while you're interrupting your tea and what have you, asking you if you would like to buy car insurance or home insurance or pet insurance alike. But I had 3 years in there and it was brilliant. In fact, I nailed it. I really did. And I won a trip to New York. And it was superb. And in my final year at university, I needed to find a topic to study and research. And strangely enough, the topic that I picked was about cause-related marketing. And cause-related marketing is simply about organisations contributing to charities. Or a cause in this book. It had all the hallmarks and pretty much everything that they needed to know how to associate and affiliate their insurance products with a great cause. So, for example, motor insurance, my suggestions were that they'd affiliate themselves and associate with victims of car accidents for uninsured loss claims, or the home insurance to connect with homeless charities. And then they were introducing this new product, and I had to go to London to present the dissertation. Now, randomly, I chose this cause-related marketing. Needless to say, 25 years later, it's exactly what we're doing with the red sky. So I presented it to the senior leadership team in London, and they were rolling out a product called pet insurance. Now, the 10 a penny these days, but the pet insurance was a new product, and my suggestion was to roll it out with an association to cat and dog homes, basically in animal shelters, and they did it. So a premium that would be paid by a dog or a cat owner, a percentage of that will go direct to that root cause. And it was amazing. I was over the moon that they implemented it, they used it, and it was real life. Wow, a national company was using my suggestions. So anyway, with life and with me anyway, everything's got a balance. And it was quite a pivotal time, really. I got a first for that project and for the dissertation, and I thought, I've nailed it again. I'm going to sail through and complete my degree. But needless to say, I kind of got kicked in the guts because I failed a module that I'm still not very clever at, to be fair. It was about financial accounting and and maths. Marketing was my strong point. Everything that was fluffy, glossy, you know, and the shine of the product, that was where my forte was. But I failed, and that meant that I couldn't graduate with all of my friends until the year after. So I was a bit upset, but, you know, again, another lesson learned, but I still haven't learned how to add up, really. Anyway, I graduated the year after with a 2-1, and I stayed on at Royal & Son Alliance and more than for another year. And like I say, I worked with some fantastic people. And in fact, I had a great team leader. She was brilliant. She's probably watching this now, because she's become a mentor, something that I'd never really had before, apart from, you know, me mum and dad, really. But I did realise that I needed to progress, and I wasn't going to get that opportunity in Sunderland at more than. And I wanted a job in marketing, and I wanted a job in creativity. And a job came up at Reg Vardy's, which is a motor dealership, a motor dealers. And their head office was just across the road from more than. So I went over for an interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. And it was at Vardy's where I was exposed for the very first time to some core values. They were actually written down, and they lived and breathed these core values. And Sir Peter Vardy, he was adamant that anybody who worked for him had to know those values inside out. And they were respect, passion, recognition, opportunity, integrity, professionalism, and commitment. Now, pretty much they had a Vardy V, which was their logo. And needless to say, everybody who worked there was kind of microchipped to the Vardy values way. And it was my way of getting on the ladder. I worked in the marketing department, and I organised the adverts, and I was given Nissan and Ford. So then I regularly used to speak to the sales managers, the general managers who were putting the campaigns together for them. And all the time they were saying, Sergio, what are you wasting your time up there for in head office? Come and work in sales. And I was like, absolutely no chance. I'm better than that. I'm not going to sell cars. I've been at university. Anyway, they ended up cracking me, and I ended up going to work in a car dealership. So I was invited down for the interview, and the guy said, what makes you think you can sell cars if you've never done it before in your life? And my response was, well, with a name like Sergio Petrucci, if I can't sell a Fiat Punto, I'll struggle for the rest of my life. There's got to be a problem there. And needless to say, that I only had that one question to answer, and I was in the door. And I was there for 8 years. 8 years of selling cars to everybody that I could possibly meet on the forecourt. People would come back. And you know what? I would make so many contacts, and my network was going to start to grow from that. Everyone that I sold it with the care and attention that I wanted to be treated with myself. And during my time of selling the cars, I was married and I had a little boy. But one thing I realized was the people that were working in the motor trade around me were kind of single guys, and the older ones were divorced and that. And it was pretty much down to the hours that they were working. The wives would never see them. And I didn't want to be like that. So I made a conscious decision to try and get somewhere where it was a 9-to-5 job, still similar pay to what I was used to, because the money was really, really good. Far better than it was when I was working in the marketing department, But again, it was giving me another opportunity to see another dimension to the business. Anyway, I was in a trap, and somebody rang me and said there's a job going at a local radio station in Sunderland called Sun FM. Well, I didn't really listen to them at the time. And I went and applied for the job, and I was invited for an interview. Anyway, I had the chat, and then I was invited back to give a presentation. And needless to say, I blew them away, to be honest with you. I was the only person to ever get a commercial produced for a campaign for an interview. And lo and behold, they also had values, and they were written all over the wall. And they loved their values. They were open, honest, professional, fair, fun, and unconventional. And I guess the last two was me down to a T. Honestly, without blowing, without sounding a bit big-headed, I was fantastic at the job. I loved it. I did. Wherever I went, people would buy the advertising off me because I loved it. I loved the product. I knew it was right. And I was a record breaker. I smashed the station's revenue records every month. And I was always the best. I became known as Mr. Sun FM, to be fair, and that's the way I worked. So back in the day, when I see my dad's name on Salon 70 above the door, or Reg Vardy's, I used to see it as Sergio's car sales at the FIAT dealership and the Alfa Romeos. And now I used to see this radio station as mine. It was, that's how I lived and breathed, wherever I was working, Things were great, really were. And I came to a point where that greatness, similar to when I was at university and I got that first for the thesis and the dissertation, all good things tend to kick or whatever. I ended up getting taken on a team building day at a high ropes events, and I ended up breaking my leg. The irony is that the day was actually called Reaching for New Heights, and I couldn't have hit an all-time low, to be fair. I did actually think, what the hell am I going to do? Because it's close to Christmas. And, I didn't know if the company really paid your wages for so many months or anything like that, but it opened my eyes, and I just said to the MD, I said, look, I'll do my best. I'll still work from home. I know I can't drive, and I did. But I did it in a way. Sorry. I did it in a way that I thought, well, this is unreal. I broke the station revenue record 3 months in a row. Sat in my city. It was my experience for the first time of lockdown of what we know today. I couldn't go anywhere, so I had to do the job from the house. But I thought that was the biggest problem I had. When the cast came off, I had 4 more operations, and it was just a nightmare, really. A time of my life I'll never forget. Until my little girl was, basically the doctors and nurses told me and my wife Emma that Luna, our little girl, had a heart condition and that she was a ticking time bomb. Sorry. And basically they had to operate, but I don't want to go into that today because it clearly it makes me a bit upset. But basically I had to take some time out of work again in the following March to be by my daughter's bedside while they operated on her, and needless to say, it was a success because we're still here and we're smiling, well, sometimes, and so it was tough, but and I was only in hospital with that for a week. But when I got back to work, I was shocked because I was basically asked where my revenue was going to come from, I was behind target. I was like, what? Do you know where I've just been? And that's when I realised what was important. Life, family. I realised I wasn't any more than just a commodity, really. You know, so 9 months passed, and before I left the hospital, I tried to give the nurse that looked after us £100 to say thank you. Anyway, she refused it, and clearly you can't pay nurses to say thank you because it's not just the done thing. But I didn't know that. I thought it was just like giving someone a tip in a restaurant, to be fair. So 9 months passed, and I said, well, if you don't take it, I'll raise a bit of money for the unit. And 9 months passed, and somebody said, I thought you were going to do something to buy a machine or something for the hospital to say thank you. And I said, I know you're right. Anyway, we were called back to the hospital for a documentary. And I says, well, what could I do? I can't possibly jump out of an aeroplane or run a marathon or climb a mountain. I don't know, we'll just have a party, you know. We'll get people a little intoxicated maybe, and they might just feel generous and donate some money to a great cause. So what I did was I organised something called a Red Sky Ball, which was typically named after the morning that Luna had the operation. And the sky was full of fire. And I went to the hospital with Emma and Luna to do this documentary, and I saw the lady from Chuff, which is the charity which is associated to the Children's Heart Unit. I said, look, I'm trying to do something to raise some money to say thank you and give something back, and then I can just crack on and I've done my bit. And she said, oh, fantastic, what you're going to do? I said, I'm going to do a gala dinner. Oh, great. Well, the gala dinner, how many people? And I said, 400. Oh, wow, great. And I said, I'm going to have sponsors as well and make it all shiny and great. She went, oh, when are you going to do that? Then I said, well, she said, are you going to do it in 6 months or a year's time? You know, it could be a lot of planning and to sell those tickets. Like, you know, I said, oh, it's in 3 weeks' time. Anyway, she said, don't do it. You can't do it. It'll never happen. People won't buy the tickets. I went, but it's a bit late for that. We sold the tickets in 3 days. It was amazing, it really was. And we'd raised £64,000 on a night in Sunderland on a February the 26th. And it was all blew me away, overwhelmed everybody. No more so the people that I was working with as well, and the family and the people that came for it and supported us. And somebody walked out that night to the Stadium of Light and said, Sergio, what a great time I've had. It was amazing. It was superb. But can I just tell you one thing? Don't do it again. And I was like, why not? And he said, you'll never emulate what you've done tonight. It's impossible. Well, here we are. Here we are, £400,000 later. We grew. And I got partnerships involved. Sorry. Wow, it never gets easy talking about this. Sorry. It's just immense, really. So we had the Red Sky Ball, and then we had one the following year because I wasn't going to listen to him, who said, don't do it. And not needless to say, it blew everybody away again. We raised about 55 grand, and somebody said, well, actually, he's the chairman of the university, John Mowbray. He said, don't get hell bent on how much you're raising. Even if you make £1, it's a difference. Anyway, as it happens, we were growing and growing and growing. And bear in mind, I was still at Sun FM. Emma had a full-time job too, and still does. And all of this Red Sky planning and that, which you can see is it's pretty good going. We sending emails up till midnight at night, trying to have conversations in different countries with our partners. And in I say partners, I wanted to be the most prestigious charity event ever in Sunderland, and I hooked up with Emirates just on a whim, to be honest with you, because I tried to identify the red, the links, the sky. You know, And they did. They sponsored the night the following year, and we had hundreds of people coming. But then more partners grew when they seen the Emirates logo attached to what we were doing. So the likes of Manchester City, Mercedes, Specsavers, Barclays, Santander, all these big, powerful brands coming to support Red Sky. And I never, for the want of us, wanted to detract or take anything away from the radio station from a revenue point of view, but that's how it was perceived with work. It was becoming in certain words a distraction or a merry-go-round. When will it stop? And I was like, I can't stop it. It's just rolling and rolling. And I was always looking for new partners, but I never ever let it affect my job at Sun FM. And then really it came to about 2018, and I didn't like the way that it was being received at work, and nobody was really allowed to talk about it because of that distraction that was deemed to be. In fact, we even had a pseudonym for it, and we called it Blue Ocean Square, just to throw the bosses off the scent, which was quite funny, really, in hindsight. But we had, I knew in my own heart of hearts, my time had gone. I broke my leg. She'd had the operation. I knew I was just a commodity, and they were relying on my revenue coming in every month, without fail. And it did, because I grafted and I worked so hard, because I believed it. And I always used to say, I've got it in me blood, and if whoever's listening, whether it's a student listening right now, if you can find a job that really, you attach yourselves to, and you love it and you love the product, then you're onto a winner. You really are. And that's how I felt. So when we had the 2018 one, I knew this was probably going to be my opportunity to leave and to make a bold and brave decision, to leave that comfort zone, because I questioned the values. I really did. And they were starting to drift away from my own personal values. But what really upset me really was the fact that on the night of that ball, nobody said good luck, or they knew it was happening. And on the Monday morning afterwards, after it had been in the press and everywhere else, nobody mentioned it. Nobody said well done. And it was another successful event, but it just cut like a knife after everything that I'd given. I realised that those values were drifting apart, but mine were deep roots inside me, and I wasn't going to change. So if you are watching this as a student, and you do have values yourself, but they don't quite, and you end up in a job and their values don't fit yours, then don't be frightened to make that leap. So again, it was a success, and I said I was leaving Sun FM. It was a bit of a massive story, to be fair, and I was scared. But I was making the jump because I never got the recognition that I felt as though Red Sky deserved. Other people were, and people were talking about it all the time, about how great what Sergio's done, and the Red Sky this and the Red Sky that. But ultimately, it wasn't. It was all about revenue and things like that. So when I was leaving, I had to give notice. And during my notice period, I got a surprise. I got an invitation to the Queen's Garden party. So really, in all essence, there's nobody better than to give you that recognition. I didn't really need it from the radio station where I worked. And I didn't need it from anyone else, to be honest with you, because I was already getting it. But when I got that invitation, I was like, wow. And it couldn't have come at a better time, to be fair, because it really elevated my spirits and gave me the confidence, which I clearly lack. So basically, I went off, got suited and booted, and I thought, well, I'll never get the chance to go back to Buckingham Palace again. So I hired a top hat and tails, and I looked the part. I really did. And this little Macam from Sunderland rocked up at the palace, and it was just the best day ever. but everything builds, and I was like, wow, how can we get this going again? So I wanted to, we became so big, and I had a couple of objectives really, and I noticed that there was a campaign going about getting children educated on CPR and defibrillators and first aid, but I realised that they weren't getting taught it in schools. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to the Houses of Parliament and to spend an afternoon with the Shadow Health Secretary. And I managed to have a conversation about what Red Sky was about. She was blown away really by the success of it all. And she started questioning about the campaign, because across Europe, all kids are taught that first aid, CPR, and what to do in an emergency. But for some reason, ours weren't. So I do go on a bit, and I did go on a bit that day as well. And needless to say, in September in 2020, I was delighted when they announced that they were going to roll it out across the national curriculum, and kids will be taught CPR. So next thing, I was like, Red Sky, where do we take it? I wanted to look, and I wanted it to feel like a proper, well-polished wheel, basically, a well-oiled wheel, and an engine that was like a juggernaut, shiny, bright, powerful. And I felt like all these other charities have got patrons and ambassadors. So I thought, well, I know, we'll get myself a couple of them. So I reached out to some friends who were friends with FIAT Alfa. You might know her, she's in Steps, and she was also on Strictly, on the telly. She was a great personality. Honestly, she has an absolute diamond. And I also felt like I needed to add to that. So I asked Jill Scott, who's a footballer for Man City and England, and she jumped at the chance as well to be my patron, our patron, because it isn't mine anymore. It's everybody's. So we were outgrown, and as you've probably seen on the screen there before, the event had to leave the Stadium of Light just across the road, mine, and we put it in the Beacon, and basically we ended up being the largest charity event in the northeast of England, with partnerships coming through thick and fast, and they saw the association. If they were involved, someone else wanted to be involved, and I couldn't really turn people away, so we had to grow it. And we were buying some amazing bits of kit, stuff like funding echo scanning machines, or we helped fund the first year salary of a specialist nurse called a Fontan nurse. It was the first role of its kind in the UK. An OCS transplant machine, which was featured on BBC One. And I got introduced to a guy called Kenneth Morris. His life was saved pretty much by the machine that we helped fund. And I was introduced as that guy that saved his life at the bottom of his bed by Luna's consultant on a day that I went and just, with Luna. The guy was desperate to take me up to intensive care. Needless to say, Kenneth thought I was a bloody surgeon, to be honest with you. When I was at the bottom of his bed and he was introduced to me, he says, "Oh, you a surgeon as well?" I said, "No, far from it." And then he said, "No, Mr. Morris, this is Sergio. He bought the machine that's pretty much kept you alive the way that you're here today." So anyway, I thought, well, we're growing and growing and growing. I said, what's the next step? And somebody said, well, what do you want to do with it? I said, I just want to, I want to grow, but I want to create some sort of a legacy or something that can be built upon even when I'm not here anymore. They said, and some mentors said, why don't you turn it into a full-on charity? So I applied and it was kicked back, again, rejected. So I asked for feedback and I said, what's the crack, Why? I thought Red Sky is brilliant. They said, you know more than a fundraiser. You need to do stuff in the community. So you'll probably be, you might have seen a lot of these popping up all over the place. Yeah, so we're responsible for putting these in the community, which give us the charitable status from the England and Wales Charity Commission, which I'm very proud of. So the application was accepted on the basis that we were going to work with communities, work with schools, work with factories, workplaces, and also ethnic minority communities as well, because it's heart disease in the BME groups is quite apparent through generations. So we're doing a lot of stuff in the community, and I'm grateful to say that they actually said, yeah, you might as well crack on now. You're fully fledged charity. And with that, we had to put a board together. So we've got a few trustees on the board who can add value to the Red Sky Foundation. And, you know, they do question me now and again, because I am a bit, well, off the map occasionally with the events that we do. But we raise fantastic money, and we raise fantastic money for fantastic machines. We've got partnerships with the North East Ambulance Service, we've got them with the NHS, and we've got them with all of these corporates. So basically that charitable status was granted on the 20th of March last year. It was the same day that we were supposed to do the Red Sky Gala dinner. And needless to say, it was a bit of a, you know, bit of a world problem, isn't it? This coronavirus, everything went on hold, but we had to adapt. And how would we do it? And we were very lucky. I squeezed an outdoor brunch in between two lockdowns. I squeezed a golf day in, and we were able to get funds available to buy more defibrillators. Now, we only pressed pause on the gala dinner, and we're going to do it again next March. It's a superb event at the Beacon of Light, but it's already sold out because nobody asked for their money back. And the fact that nobody asked for their money back meant that when the hospitals put an appeal out to say they didn't have enough of these, we went and bought 23. That meant that coronavirus patients, well, we were going to give them the best chance of survival. Anyway, there's plenty of things to talk about. But finally, before I go, I talk about values all the way through. So the values that I felt Red Sky Foundation needed as well, and they needed to live and breathe them, but really do that and believe in them. And anyway, our values are very strong, resilient, to show grit, determination, and never say die attitude, empathy, feelings and emotive, diversity, because we're very, very different, sincerity, well, yeah, in knowledge because every day is a learning day. And finally, why not? Because someone said, don't do it. Why not? Why can't you do it? And at the end of the day, you should never be afraid to do what you believe in. Be bold, be brave. So it leads to me, I really, you know, you probably say, well, what happens at these events? I'd like to show you a short video, really, if you can just watch it and then let us know what you think when we can open up for some questions later. But it'll show you where we've come from, but it'll give you a taste.
I first met Luna and Sergio and Emma when Luna was nearly 2 years old, and they came to my clinic and had a nice chat with them about how Luna was, and then we performed the scan of Luna's heart, and it did show that Luna had a hole in her heart which was going to need surgical operation to correct it. Although this is an operation which is relatively straightforward, it's an operation with nearly 100% survival at the Freeman Hospital. It is open heart surgery, and it's open heart surgery in a child. And there are some risks inherent to that. But what you always notice when you explain the diagnosis like this to a family is that the children are completely fine. They carry on smiling, laughing and playing in the corner of the room. But the parents take it hard. And the reason they take it hard is that there's going to be an operation happen to their child. And what happens when a child undergoes cardiac surgery in particular is that the parents have to come to terms with the fact that they're going to give their child to an anaesthetic nurse and anaesthetist. The child's going to be put to sleep, go onto a heart-lung bypass machine with a operation carried out through the chest, and then end up on intensive care afterwards. And to us, it becomes very routine. We do it all the time. But we always have to make sure that we understand what the families are going through.
at the time, the world was turned upside down. And the morning that Luna had an operation there, she had open heart surgery, and nothing can prepare any parent for that. She was so brave, and I always remember the morning walk over to the hospital from the parent block, and all the sky was red. That's where we get the red sky ball from. And there's so many people whose lives are affected by the heart unit in Newcastle's Freeman Hospital, that we want to give something back with the help and support that we get from our sponsors, our guests that come to big gala dinners like what we put on twice a year, and any other little things. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, essentially every penny that we raise does make a difference.
We approached Sergio this year to come on board as a corporate sponsor. We were invited this morning to come along to the Ward 23 at the Freeman Hospital to see where the money is spent. The money is spent on wonderful facilities, doctors, nurses. I can't say how amazed I am by this place. It's simply brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we can raise as much money as humanly possible for this wonderful charity. The more and more, the better.
To know where the money goes to that we raise at Red Sky Ball, and also to see the machines that help children and babies and adults now as well. It makes a huge difference, and it's just about giving something back.
As a parent, I can only imagine how hard it is to find out that your child needs help with their heart, whether it's a transplant or they need a hole in their heart fixed. It's devastating to find out their news and to have to be part of that ward and face and watch your child going through that. I know personally a friend who has had that recently, and they wouldn't have been able to benefit from it have we not had the Red Sky Ball and the amazing equipment that is there for us now. So please remember to dig deep, because you never know when it's going to benefit somebody you know, or maybe your family yourselves.
This is the fourth year that Everyone Active have been a sponsor of the Red Sky Ball. And this is the first year that I've been lucky enough to attend Freeman's Hospital and have a walk around and just see the amazing work that the money goes towards, really. I mean, it's quite emotional when you walk around and see the children, and what the parents must be going through. So it's really important that as many people can get involved. And if there's anyone else that's thinking about being a sponsor, I really would recommend it.
No.
Well, our unit's always expanding. We're very hopeful that we're going to have a new ward built in the not too distant future. For that, we're going to need more kit for obvious reasons. We always need the heart scanning machines, which are expensive, but they don't last forever, so they need replacing. And we need little things too. So, when families come here, they may arrive in the middle of the night with not a bean, nothing to brush their teeth with or anything, and so we can provide them with just a toiletry kit just to get them through the first night or two.
It's fantastic that we receive.
So
the people can help us other than...
it'll give you a little taste of what Red Sky Ball's about and how we raise the money. But the fact is that whoever's watching this, just take this from what you may, really, and I hope I've inspired. At the end of the day, be proud of what you've done and what you can do. If you live, sleep and breathe, what clearly I do. But live by your own values. Thank you. And I'd like to invite any questions or anything like that. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry, I was a bit late at the beginning.
Sergio, that has got to be one of the most impactful presentations I've heard. I've got some good questions, and I know we go back quite a few years. I didn't know that your parents owned Salon 70. One of my friends actually used to go there, and and it speaks very highly of it. But yeah, T.Y. McGurk's, remember that? More Than, I actually did some consultancy with More Than, so our paths may have crossed, and also with Vardy's. So it's a very small world. What I particularly like about you as an individual is, you're always so positive, and there are always opportunities as you go through life within that. And you know, your impact that you made at Sun FM, the impact that you made at Vardy's, but most of all, I'm not going to say footprint, because it's still moving forward. But what you've built with Red Sky Foundation is amazing, and very, very informative. But my question is, and I know we're getting short for time. My question is, what keeps you so motivated?
Wow. Thank you very much for those comments. I guess it's the lives that we're saving and the machines that we can do. Poor. I think until I start filling up and getting obsessed and proud, that's the only thing that keeps me motivated. You know, somebody said, "Do you like a dynamo?" You never stop, and it's because it's true. I do live, breathe, sleep Red Sky, because I owe.
You've got a lovely sense of humour that came out in your presentation. That maybe I had to keep switching my mic off because I was laughing as you were dropping some of your jokes. I've got to ask you one question though. You raised £26,000 in Sunderland after Christmas, February 26th. How on earth did you do that when most people are just trying to pay off their Christmas gifts?
I know. Well, first of all, thanks for showing that you listened carefully, because it was actually 46,000. Do you know what it is? we did it because, again, I spoke from the heart, and people fell in love.
There's something very unique about
the Red Sky. I had to fell in love with the story, but most of all, they fell in love with the fact that it's a happy story. For what you wouldn't think it, would you? Bloody hell. It is a happy story, and the fact that nobody's died, and Luna's a perfect little girl. She's 8 years old. Her heart works normal, just like mine and yours. Well, probably better. You know, and at the end of the day, people's, whether or not they can give £1, £10, or even like £7,000. I mean, I sold 2 standing tickets to Beyonce on that night for £7,500 to 2 guys who just loved the story, you know, and I guess I've got a story to tell.
Okay. Sergio, we've got a quick question from one of the students, and it says, Sergio, what are your own personal values, and what was the pinnacle point that made you take the leap from Sun FM that gave you the courage?
I think the biggest thing is respect. That's a very, very core value, big core value, and resilient. In the motor trade, it's probably the most cutthroat industry to work in, and I became very thick-skinned. You know, I do wear my heart on my sleeve, clearly. And what it was like to take that leap of faith was really hard.
Yeah. The student who asked that is Charlotte Nash, and Charlotte's remembered a quote that you've made. So I'm going to try and say this without laughing. Favourite quote, just a Mackham rocking up at the Palace. Yeah, a very humble way of describing the invitation to the Queen's Garden Party. But once again, very impactful within that. If I could leave on one question, what advice could you give our students with regards to their, you know, to passing their degrees and their future careers?
Just don't give up, and really just be proud of who you are. Like I said, if you can get yourself a set of values that you would probably been brought up with, that you might not even know you have been, but it's the simple things, the little things, the love for other people, be kind to other people, but also to be grateful and to look up to people because they were once in your shoes. Never look down. My dad always said that. Don't look what's behind you or below you, but it's a level of respect for the people there, but also the people that are climbing that ladder. And we've all climbed it in some respect. But the biggest thing is, and I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but you can see that reach for the sky. It's endless, and let your heart run. let your heart run free.
Sergio, on behalf of the University of Sunderland, the Faculty of Business Law, and all the students and staff who've tuned into today's presentation, thank you very, very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.